Welcome to the Civil Engineering Writing Project, Language Unit 3. This is the first of 2 units about effective sentence structure for writing in civil engineering. In this unit, we explain the use of simple sentence structure to make your ideas clear and easy for readers to understand. We'll also show you 4 specific techniques for revising sentences to make them simpler and more effective. Effective simple sentences have 2 characteristics that make them easy for readers. They convey one main idea, and they have the subject and verb close together. Read over these examples of simple sentences that have the subject in red and the verb in blue. You should see that there is one idea in each sentence, and the subjects are close to their verbs. The content is not always simple. Content is not the same as the structure of the sentence. In fact, the more technical and complicated your content is, the more important it is to use simple sentence structures. Here are some comments from civil engineering practitioners about the need for simple sentences.
Clients want to be able to read fast or skim. Simpler sentences are more concise, and they're less likely to be ambiguous or be misinterpreted.
Our writing advice in this unit, like all our units, is based on research about writing by civil engineering practitioners and students. And as you can see here, most practitioners do practice what they preach about simple sentences. The figure compares the percentage of simple sentences in student reports and practitioner reports. You can see that the majority of sentences in practitioner reports have simple structure, but student reports don't. In other words, student writing uses more complicated sentences. In engineering practice, complicated sentences are more likely to make writing unclear and to make clients unhappy. Unclear, complicated sentences also make university instructors unhappy, though they might not be as vocal about it. Let's look more closely at some examples of effective sentences written by civil engineering practitioners. Example 3 has 2 sentences from a report about the design of an intersection. A good way to confirm that sentences contain one main idea is to identify the subject and verb and make sure there's just one of each. Look at these 2 sentences and identify for yourself the subject and verb for each one. Here are the subjects marked in red and the verbs marked in blue. Each sentence has one subject and one verb, and they're close together. If you couldn't identify the subjects and verbs in these sentences, or if you just need a review of what makes a complete sentence, you should use our Grammar and Mechanics Lesson 1, which reviews the basic parts of a sentence. I mentioned earlier that simple sentence structure doesn't always mean a short sentence. Read over sentence 4. The sentence might seem complicated to you at first, but that's because the information is very precise. For instance, it doesn't just say the erosion is at the culvert on Pleasant Drive. It's directly beneath and around the approximately 42-inch culvert near mile point 0.75 on Pleasant Drive. But now, identify the subject and verb of this sentence for yourself. Here they are, and you can see there's still one subject and its verb, and they're close together. Often, writing in civil engineering requires being specific about locations, sizes, names, and other information. You'll need specific wording for precise, accurate information, but you can still have one main idea and a simple sentence structure. Now, it's true that some content requires connecting ideas in sentences. So our next language unit covers how to use complex sentence structures effectively. But for now, let's go on to what you can do to practice writing effective sentences with simple sentence structure. We'll cover 4 techniques. We suggest you first consider these revising techniques to use after you have a rough draft of a paper. It's too hard to think consciously about your sentence structure and new content at the same time. But soon you'll be producing new sentences with these techniques too. The first technique is to check that each sentence has only one main idea. Remember, you can see this with one subject and one verb, and they should be close to each other. Sentence 5 is a real sentence from a student's lab report. An assumption was made to figure out the true stress by trying to figure out where does the cross-sectional area start to decrease, and from there an equation has been made to figure out the true stress. Most readers just think, huh? Here are the subjects in red and verbs in blue. This sentence has many ideas and many subjects and verbs. No wonder readers can't understand it. We've heard one practitioner call sentences like these train wreck sentences. They've gone off the rails and the words are piled up in a jumble. The writer's problems are further compounded by imprecise words like figure out. For an effective revision, this writer needs to first get clear on the individual ideas he wants to express, and then write sentences with one main idea each. This might take some thinking, or even talking with the instructor to understand concepts better. Train wreck sentences often come from writers themselves not having a clear understanding of their ideas. This writer is actually trying to describe how stress and true stress were each calculated. Here's a revision, with 2 sentences, one main idea per sentence. First, how stress was calculated, then how true stress was calculated. Each sentence has the subject and verb close together. You might notice that they actually still are a little more complicated than simple sentences. But because there is one main idea per sentence, they're easy to understand. The revision also made some words more precise, like using calculated instead of figure out. Techniques 2 and 3 for effective sentences are to reduce complicated structures to shorter, more precise phrases, and to place lists of items at the end of the sentence. Let's look at example 6, another sentence from student writing. Although it is easy to describe the material in words, when it comes to real data, variety in materials, variety in test condition, human error, and machine error are factors that can spread the data wide enough to make the judgment not as it is easy in theory. This writer got so lost in the sentence, she didn't even catch the typo at the end of it. What makes this sentence structure complicated? Well, the sentence starts with 2 long introductory structures, and both of them are vague and wordy. Then the subject phrase, marked in red, has 4 separate items, each with multiple words. This is just too much for readers to hold in mind as they wait to get to the verb, are. Then after the verb, there's another long-winded, complicated structure. Now let's look at a revision for sentence 6. In the revision, the very long introductory structures were changed to under field conditions. The subject of the sentence was reduced to 4 factors, and the 4 factors themselves were given as a list at the end of the sentence. It is much easier for readers to take in a list of items after they know the subject and verb of the sentence. Finally, the complicated structure at the end of the sentence was changed to the more precise verb interfere and the short phrase with consistent measurement. The sentence is now easier to understand, much shorter, and also more precise in meaning. One more technique that you can use to improve your writing is to refer to figures, tables, and samples by number. Read over sentence 7. The long-winded underlined phrases can all be simplified by referring to the graph and samples by their numbers. Before we revise this sentence, though, also think about the idea of having one main idea per sentence. What is the main idea for this sentence? Here are the subject and verb. Do these tell you much about the content of the sentence? No, not at all. The writer did a good job of keeping the subject and verb close together, but unfortunately, they're meaningless. The items in bold are the main content of the sentence, but they're lost in a complicated wordy structure. A revision that uses numbers and has one main idea is concise and specific. As shown in Figure 1, samples 1 and 2 exhibited ductile behavior. You could also refer to the figure at the end of the sentence. This gives more emphasis to the content and a little less to the figure. Also notice that the revision uses more precise and accurate word choices. The samples exhibit ductal behavior. That's what they did. There's no need then to use a wordy expression like "are most likely to be ductal," as in the original. These 4 techniques can help your writing, but effective writing skills take a lot of practice, not just listening to explanations. Next, you should try applying the techniques in the practice activities in the written version of Language Unit 3. That unit includes practice with sentences from many kinds of writing. It also describes more examples of effective practitioner writing. And if you're worried about your writing sounding choppy from using simple sentences, look at the Mythbuster box in the unit. If you don't have the unit on a course website, you can find it on the Civil Engineering Writing Project website, under Materials. Oh, and if you couldn't identify the subjects and verbs in sentences, try our Grammar and Mechanics Lesson 1. You can find it on the project website too.